Hey, this is Brent,
Hey, this is Jordan.
What's up? This is Matt.
Hey, this is Sean.
and this is the Digital Ascent Podcast.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us here at Digital Ascent. I have Jordy, Brent, and Matt with me today, and we are looking forward to another episode. We'll go ahead and start off with the news topics, and then we'll roll into the main portion, which is how has technology changed society, like holistically. And we got some categories there that we're going to go through and just, give our thoughts on it. But alrighty, so with the news portion, what we got, guys?
Oh, and I'll hop in here. It might be a quick one for news, but the big one this week, E3 is dead. Officially, it is dead. It's not coming back. For the uninitiated, E3.
I have it on my
was
soundboard. I could have played it, but Matt did it so much better.
It was a really big, video game expo that happened, summertime and has happened for. Has it been over 20 years? I don't know when the first one. I know it was early 2000s. But then the pandemic happened, and they went away for a little bit. And correct me if I'm wrong.
95.
I think they came back last year, or maybe was it last year? And they did a. Did you say 95, Matt?
95.
I verified.
That
Quick
is
Google
crazy.
search, but yeah.
A little over 25 years. I think they came back last year after like a 2-year gap.
Wow.
But it wasn't a fully, it wasn't like at a convention center or anything. I think it was all online. Maybe it was a year before that. Doesn't matter. Anyways, they've been on their way out for a while. There are, a couple journalists I follow are even reporting on the last E3 in-person event was in 2019. And while, this sucks, this probably was going to happen regardless of the pandemic happening anyway, seems to be the general consensus. So I'm really bummed about this, guys. This was like a bucket list item for me and has been for a really long time. I had tickets purchased for 2020.
I remember that.
And
then I remember you talking about if how it gets canceled, you're going to rage.
Dude, I had tickets purchased. We were ready to go. Had the PTO scheduled, slotted, everything, and then down in the dumps. So, that's it. E3's dead. It's over. But that's okay. Summer Games Fest happens. It's an event put on by Jeff Keighley, who also does the Game Awards every year. And so this really just gives Mr. Keighley himself a larger window to take hold, over the summer. So anyways, yep, that's it for that one. What's the other thing we were going to talk about? Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate sweeping the Game Awards last week. Ridiculous.
It did pretty well.
6 awards.
Let's go.
Let me see
Let's
here.
go.
Well,
It won 6 awards last week at the Game Awards. Those 6 were Game of the Year, Best Performance, Best RPG, Best Multiplayer, Best Community Support, and Player's Choice. That was insane. And I think a lot of the big games that, I should say a lot of the Game of the Award, Game of the Year category were all the same games. It was like Spider-Man, Alan Wake, Baldur's Gate, that Mario joint, Zelda, and was it Resident Evil 4 or was it just those 5?
yeah, that one cropped up sometime.
Okay. Almost all of the categories that Baldur's Gate was nominated in, like they won. And so Spider-Man was the other one. I don't know if I said Spider-Man, but Spider-Man was nominated for almost all of the same categories. And I don't think it won not one damn award last week.
Hard year to compete against Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I don't think that says anything about Spider-Man or any of the other nominees.
Yeah.
I think it says a lot
Gate's
about
just-
Baldur's Gate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
I think I have 160 hours in it, and I feel like I have just an enormous amount of content left to see. There's just a lot there. The game is great.
When you think about the actual scale of Baldur's Gate and what they did is huge. There's
So
not
much
really
there.
compare when
And
you
ain't
think about Elden Ring.
Larian, aren't they like
Yeah,
a small
Larian.
developer? like a really small developer? Because I've heard talks or conversations that like Baldur's Gate should technically
I
be
don't think
considered
so.
like an indie.
Not anymore.
Okay. I'm just a very. I'm not a lot of people doing it like them right now.
It's fair. They did an
Apparently,
excellent job.
more than 450 employees and offices in 6 countries. So
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
not crazy small. Yeah.
I
Not
think
anymore,
that they were. I'm seeing a PC gamer article saying that from back in 2022, saying that originally they were only like 150
Okay.
people at one point, and then they grew over X many years. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing exactly how many years that is, but they were smaller at one point in time when they were at least working on like Divinity Original Sin, and Baldur's Gate's just like I played Divinity Original Sin and Original Sin 2, and they're both great, and I feel like each time they grew and learned and just made the game a little better, and Baldur's Gate 3 is fantastic, and I can't wait to see what they produce next. They're one of the few studios that I'm like, man, show me more, please.
They have,
whatever you've got.
Is there DLC coming out for Baldur's Gate 3, or is that like a one and done?
I
I don't actually know.
Okay, so not announced yet.
No, I mean they discussed, they released it calling it feature complete, and they've added several features since then. So I guess that makes all of those DLCs, perhaps. I'm not really too sure. And
As far as game
I-
content, I'd be curious what that would look like. Honestly,
yeah, like what do you do? Like how do you slot it in there? Do you make it available? In previous games, it comes slotted as a separate campaign that you do either before or after. And when I say that, I'm thinking of Baldur's Gate 2. I'm thinking of the Neverwinter Night series, things like that, right? Where you just like these campaigns are treated as modules eventually. And it's almost like what you see now with a live service model, like you do with Destiny, but it's it's the way that it was issued to like Neverwinter Nights 2, 20 years ago or something like that. I don't know. Whatever. I hope there's DLC. Please. I would love to see
yeah,
more.
if there is, I'm down.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm probably gonna
never
buy
gonna
it.
say no.
It's probably gonna be good.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
All right.
Can I
Anything
slip-
else?
Can I slip one more random topic in there for us?
Sure.
And we didn't talk about, yeah. So surprise topic, everyone. Microsoft released a new secure print driver. So for those who have been paying attention, yeah, exactly. For those who have been like paying attention in the security world, you remember that print nightmare happened. I believe it was in this past year, and that like they patched it, and then it turns out the patch wasn't good enough, and then they patched it again. And this particular bug allowed you to leverage the print driver to, I think it was like you could like use it to gain local administrative privileges.
Sure could.
And just go hard. And I mean, it was a really ugly bug, and it took several months to patch. It's one of those ones that if you have it in your environment, I personally recommend that you work on rooting that one out. And so they're beginning to offer a new secure print driver. As of like the recording, it was announced just a few days ago, so I don't have a ton of details yet. If you're in a position to look at things like that, I personally recommend looking at it. I know I'm going to be looking at it and seeing if it's something that we can use. Hopefully it somehow makes the printing process easier. My guess is
Doubtful.
that it won't, yeah, because nothing makes the printing process easier. And I don't know. I don't know. No matter what I've done in my life, it seems.
I'm
like
curious
there's
about
always-
functionality. That was
Yeah,
my first
yeah.
thought was, okay, if
Yeah,
you're fixing it,
that's
what are
my
you doing
assumption.
to like
Mhm.
functionally change how it operates, and how is
Yeah.
that going to play ball? That was
Yeah, yeah. My first big initial concern is, are you going to lose feature sets?
Mhm.
Right, because a
Yep.
lot of times that comes like you get security by putting up barriers, gates, and walls, metaphorically, and like streamlining Like where before you had fences with like their chain link with holes where you kind of like, tie things onto and things like that. Now you have something more like drywall that's a little harder to like stick something to. So I don't know. Either way, I just thought it was kind of an interesting thing. And, hope, hopefully it'll make printing more secure. Hooray.
But at what cost?
But
And I'll
at
leave it
what
there.
cost? Yep.
Yeah.
More secure, but it still won't work.
Yeah, it's not going to work anyway. So what's the matter? Secure, insecure. You're never
Yeah,
going
what
to
does
get
it
your
matter?
papers printers. Good luck.
Yeah. Good luck.
That's
Go
Yep.
back to the manual
I
printing
hate
press.
printers. Yeah, right? Yeah, the printers are terrible.
Yeah.
Sorry. We should just have an episode called Printers Are Terrible, and we all just sit there and just riff on printers for 35 minutes. How much we
I'm
hate them.
actually
We
about
should
that.
tell
I hate them with a fiery
Ter-
passion.
terrible printer experiences.
We
Yeah.
could call it Trash Tech Tuesdays. We'll do it on
Yeah.
Tuesdays.
Yeah, I talk about my experience with my laser jets and how I had to
Oh,
clean,
no.
I had to spend ink to clean the nozzles.
Yeah.
Right?
MFPs.
So that-
Whole
Yeah.
ink
Print.
cartridge gone.
And
Brand new
that is
printer.
what-
Please calibrate your printer. You're low on ink. What?
I just put that thing in. What are you talking about?
Bro, this was like this happened to me. I know we're not doing an episode on printers, but this actually happened to me. I pulled out the thing and I was like, okay, new print cartridges needs to be calibrated. Can't calibrate it because the nozzle's gunked up. So I do the nozzle stuff. Okay, it works. Working on calibrating, get it calibrated. Low ink can't print the thing throughout the printer.
Yep.
That like literally happened to me over the course of an hour. I went from owning a printer to, okay, I guess I'm going to buy a new printer. Gosh, I hate printers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
On that note, what a fantastic segue. Not really.
Yeah.
So, topic for today is how technology has kind of impacted society as a whole. And I wanted to do this is somewhat of a philosophical question to a degree, but it is something I like sitting down and thinking of, not in a cynical or, apocalyptic way, but just as a whole. We've seen a lot of change in tech, right? Over the last few decades even. And so functionally how we work as a society is pretty heavily dependent on it. So I've got a couple topics here, or well, not topics, but categories for what we think are pros and cons, just generally talking about how it's impacted our lives and then society as a whole. So first one is connectivity and communications, right? So I'll start it off to kind of give you an idea of where I'm going with it. If you think about the last 20, 30 years, we went from like primarily postage to now I can talk with anybody immediately in practically real time, in most cases real time, at any point. You think of, what is it? What is that chat thing? I meant to look it up beforehand. I couldn't remember it. Basically, it's like roulette, and you just roll through different connections with people.
Chat roulette.
Yeah, chat roulette. Thank you. I was right there. I was close.
You were good. You had half of it right there, man.
I had the one word, right? It counts, whatever. And so now, I see these videos on YouTube Shorts where there's this guy that speaks multiple languages, primarily Mandarin, but, he's in these, I'll call them lobbies for lack of a better term, but with people that speak Mandarin and in real time with pretty high fidelity of video, they're having conversations. And, if you think about not even just talking to people in your local area, but people around the world, and then you apply that to business, there's a whole level of communication that we've never experienced before in the history of our species. And it's really opened up a lot of doors. You think about business, you think about medical. So now you can get opinions from other medical entities outside of your country. that are around the globe. So you can get specialists, right? And that's sort of a different topic, but for the sake of communication, you think about, being able to conduct business with anybody around the world immediately. It's kind of wild to me. On the communication standpoint, I see it more as a pro than a con. I think there are still cons though. You get cyberbullies, you get people putting misinformation out there, or just hateful speech. That's just comes part and parcel with humanity, it seems. But for the most part, there's a lot of cool stuff that's going on, and there's a lot of positive things too if you look for it. I personally think that it's an algorithm training mechanism. As far as what you search for and what you feed your algorithm is a lot of what you'll get. So, I try to train my algorithms to do a lot of positive things, to see people having success in their life, or overcoming weight goals, or fitness goals, all sorts of things. But I mean, you can get all sorts of communication and input and learning on your cell phone. It's a thing that sits in your pocket, and it blows my mind. So I'm gonna stop there because I want to hear from everybody else. But that's kind of how I want to roll through these. But Brent, I'm gonna popcorn over to you.
You said one thing that reminded me of an experience that we had not too long ago. I had to take my wife to the emergency room. I don't know, it was like July or something like that. She had essentially stones in her gallbladder. But when we went to the emergency room, you obviously there's personnel there, there's staff there, there's nurses and doctors and all that. But they rolled in essentially like a huge battery with an iPad attached to it.
Yeah.
And the iPad, they're like, all right, hit the button to begin on the iPad. And this guy popped up from, I don't know where. He wasn't in the building, I can tell you that much. And we went through like insurance paperwork real quick and all that, and like signed all the paperwork right there in the emergency room on this iPad. And like, he would be like, all right, you should see the form popping up now. And the form would pop up and we could review it real quick and sign it and hit submit. And then he'd be back on the screen looking at us again. And we went through the whole process right there, like bedside, over this, rolling iPad, and it was done. Like it was super convenient. And speaking of like the healthcare side of it, I think it's amazing. I mean, you've got doctors doing robotic surgery remotely, like overseas, operating on folks. Like imagine being asleep, laid out on the bed in a hospital, like an operating room, getting worked on by robot hands from a doctor that's, 5,000 miles away, and you're relying on internet and satellite and all these technologies that actually work without a fault, so that I'm sure they have a lot of fail safes built into that. Don't get me wrong, but it's amazing to think about. Like, yeah, right. We hope it doesn't go Terminator on us and like rip us apart on the table, but
start shredding us right on the operating table.
We're in pulled pork mode. We're gonna start shredding.
Pulled pork. But there's a button that it just flicks. Pulled pork mode.
Pulled pork mode.
Unsubscribe.
You're dead, right?
Unsubscribe. It is amazing, though. It really is amazing how far we've come just in that industry alone. I think that highlights at least some of the pros that you were mentioning before. That's my personal experience with it. I won't draw that on any further. I'll let somebody else go. Jordan, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think it's funny. Sean, just for the listener, Sean didn't tell us what he was going to ask us. He said, "I'm going to line some quick. Here's the premise. Here's what we're going to do," and then we started. So we didn't know. I didn't know we'd be leading off with that one. But immediately, as you had said that, I'm going to be that guy again. When I was deployed, I didn't have to worry about things in the same way that like some of my peers had the last time they had deployed. And granted, they were in country, in that specific country a couple years, before I had gotten there. All this to say, like, they didn't have cell service. I was just talking to somebody yesterday who, like, in order for him to call, not yesterday, last weekend, in order for him to call home, he had to drive to like a cell point 3 miles away from like their base, and they could only go during the day, and that made things infinitely harder because they're running missions during the day, so he didn't always get to go home and call. Sometimes it would be weeks before you called home. I had my cell phone with me 90% of the time that I was, away from home, and I talked to my wife every day. So, it's a very, and it's only been like 5 years. There was only a 5-year gap between the times that we had served. You take that back, 10 years, 15 years. I was talking to my wife on the other side of the world with it's just a very strange.
Yeah, instant communication.
Instant communication, man. And it's very strange. The only thing that we're worrying about is like, the time zones and stuff like that, right? But
Right.
I had internet, which it was like a brand new base. So like I would oftentimes think like while we're out there, like, man, we are spoiled, right? Like this country being out here sucks, and the reason we're out here sucks, but I got running water. I run my missions during the day. I'm back before 6 p.m. My ancestors, if you will, 20, 40, 50, 60 years ago, they wouldn't have none of that. You know what I mean? So World War II, you would leave. I'll see you in 2 years. Maybe. I'll send some letters when I can. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Right. So it's crazy. That's the first thing that popped into my head. And it's lots of pros and lots of cons for being able to, reach people in the way that we can, as quick as we can, and how that's
a part of the later segment. But yeah, the double-edged sword.
Double-edged sword. That's my spiel. Matt, bring us home.
All right. Man, for me, what comes to mind is what George's kind of touching on is relationships. And it really enables you to build and maintain relationships in a way
Absolutely.
that just wasn't possible. And as things developed, it's continued to get easier. I remember when I was a teenager, getting a girlfriend that was in the same area code as me, but was still like a long distance phone call. And yeah, I knew the rule. I knew the rule was don't call other area codes, right? Because other area codes equals more money. And I didn't know the rule that there were magical lines within the area
That is
codes.
crazy to me.
At
Matt,
which
you
point-
are so old.
What? Ow!
Got me.
What?
I'm so
What
sorry.
the heck, man? I was just chilling, and Jordy came up and sniped me out of nowhere.
Bro, Matt
Uncalled
deadass
for. Completely
said
out of pocket. What are we doing here?
long distance
What?
calls
Out-
used to be anything considered out of area code. I've never heard that before in my life, and that is insane.
Yeah.
You're old, Matt.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, no, it's not just that. It's also, it's also in area code at magical points that I didn't know, which apparently my girlfriend lived on the other side of, and therefore hit me with like a $300 phone bill.
Holy
Yeah,
crap.
yeah, that's on both sides, homie. Yeah, let me tell you how happy our parents were with us. It was
Sure.
not, yeah. So that
That's not
relationship
too
didn't.
dissimilar. We had something similar though, because I can remember growing up texting girls and stuff, and you had like a text limit, and I would always run that crap all the way. Like,
Yep.
My
Yep.
parents basically took my phone away. They're like, "No,
Yeah.
no, you're done."
So that's not really an issue anymore,
Mm.
right? And as things have evolved, these problems where there's like these limits and stuff like that on like what I consider to now be basic voice or like basic text communication, like they're gone. Like you just expect to be able to call most places and not have to pay a bunch. And I definitely expect to be able to send and receive text messages without having to pay anything. And it makes it really easy to just maintain personal and professional relationships, both near and far. And it's something it's something that I'm really thankful for it personally. I value relationships a lot. And so, I see it as pro. I mean, there's some cons there too, right? Not all relationships are healthy or wanted. And,
that instant availability can become a
Mm-hmm.
detriment when you have
Mm-hmm.
a relationship that you no longer wish to maintain. You are
Mm-hmm.
easily accessible. You think about
Yeah.
stuff like, you
Well,
know,
man,
your
and
car warranty and all of the robocalls that you get, or cold
mm-hmm.
calls, or emails, or I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, it's not just that, also, right? I mean, there's the other part that you have a phone number. Like, phone numbers are not quite public knowledge, right? They're pretty close at these days. You can really get them, and so if you don't want somebody to have your phone number, it's very hard to not receive messages on like a very personal level also, right?
Hmm.
Where you can be targeted or attacked for all the way down from cyber bullies, um, up to like, um, I
Malicious
don't know,
actors.
stalker, yes, malicious actors, stalker stuff, whatever, things that I don't really like want to get into a ton here. Um, so I mean, there's some cons too, right? We are now tethered to this thing that also, as a not only can we send information, but we can receive it, and we can receive it in an unbidden manner, and those relationships can be, um, gosh, mandatory is not the right word, but there's a point where if somebody really wants to harass you, there is no way to like, it's very hard to basically be like, only these 12 numbers can come inbound to me or something like that,
Right.
right? It makes the it's hard to operate in our world with that type of thing. I don't know. So there you go. There's your
Well,
pros and your cons.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And that's, I think as we get further down this list, we're going to start getting more into the cons potentially. But I think actually, Brent, you already brought up one of them, which was the healthcare side. I think one of the other cons to the healthcare side is now that everything's digital, even with HIPAA compliance and other things, your information is pretty readily available for anybody who wants to really breach those things. And it's somewhat scary to the level of how insecure things are when it comes to sensitive information. So that's a scary side for me as far as the healthcare. But you could say that really with anything that's put into the digital sphere, right? But I'll leave that for later. So the next one is education, and this is not so much. I want to clarify, not like K through 12, but education throughout the entirety of your life now. There's so many different avenues for education that it's kind of wild. So, at this point, you can pull up a YouTube video and say, I have this specific problem with X car, show me the fix. And then you have somebody that is a mechanic and you can literally pull it up. You can learn languages. You can, take physics courses. You can get into IT, by going to Udemy or CBT Nuggets or wherever you want to go. YouTube again, there's so many avenues for you to shift careers or learn about a career or just learn in general. I mean, the other day I was watching Netflix and it was a documentary on like just how vast our planet is. And so humanity as a whole was pretty limited for a long, long time to the specific area that you were in. You think about the people that came over on the Mayflower and, settled
Mhm.
America. It's like, okay, well, these people had no idea. They just sailed out in the ocean and said, there might be land, maybe not. I don't know. And they just went for it. Right. And so now it's, there's so much knowledge to be absorbed. But here's the con for me: nobody utilizes it to the fullest capacity, in my opinion. There are people that do it, and I think that it is done. But when you think about the fact that we have an infinite amount of information, which also needs to be verified, because now you have, that's another con of, you have information and you have quote unquote educational things, but fact checking those is, you have to be really diligent, because you can have thoughts and ideas swayed very easily by taking things at face value. And so I think that's another problem with our, that kind of goes into the next one, which is the cultural and societal changes. but I think it's underutilized a lot of times, at least from like my direct sphere. I see it being impacted because now you have like online colleges where you can do college education at your own pace and take a single course or whatever. And it's, there's a lot of good things that comes from education, but I think for me, it's underutilized. So I'm gonna stop there, and we'll keep the same order. So Brent, what are your thoughts on the education side, my friend?
I think it's double edged for me because I agree with your point on it being underutilized to some extent. I also feel like it has brought a generation of individuals that don't quite know how to think for themselves because all that information is so easily accessible.
Ooh.
And they can just pull something up and be like, well, YouTube said this, TikTok said that, this is how I do this thing. And like, it kind of ties into what you were hinting at with the whole, it's very, that solution is one person's solution that decided to post it somewhere. And now everybody's following that way of doing something. But I think it really hurts society to some extent. I know you said we're going to kind of go down that path here shortly, but because I don't think anybody quite knows how to do things for themselves anymore. They just automatically pull out their phone and say, well, let me Google this. Let me find this on YouTube. Let me use ChatGPT. And, if you're like, for me, I'm pulling up ChatGPT daily as a tool, but I think so many people are assuming and using it to some extent as the solution. They are literally piping something into that, and whatever it gives them, that's the answer. That is the solution. That is what they're going to use. And that, it just kind of like, they're just coasting at that point. They're not thinking for themselves. They're not even understanding how to get from point A to point B because whatever it is, the technology just solved that for them. It skips all that.
A to Z, right? Like the whole
all
process of getting there. Yeah, I see what
exactly.
You're
saying. All that problem solving ability, that the intellect that goes behind understanding how something works. In a lot of cases these days, it's no longer needed because the premise is, well, why reinvent the wheel? Someone's already done it, 40 times. Let me go find one of those 40 people that decided to share that knowledge, and I'm just going to use that. And so I think in a lot of ways, outside of your core folks that, or I should say your small subset of folks that really embrace that and then iterate and think outside the box, I feel like you have a higher percentage of what I would call like the masses now that just kind of go with the flow. And I feel like ultimately, to some extent, it kind of hurts innovation at the front end of the spectrum because those folks are never going to, I hate to use the word evolve, but they're never going to pull themselves. Yeah, they're never going to progress past a certain point because they're kind of limited by this subset of knowledge that they're already being fed. And I think that goes with education in general. Like even like my kids' education these days is a little bit more fine-tuned and specific because of technology. They've really have gone through the curriculum and determined, well, we're going to take these things out. And now we're doing subtraction and addition this way and long division's done this way. Anytime I look at my kids' homework, and I'll get the problem. And they're like, well, how did you get the problem? And I'll show them how I got it or how I got the solution to the problem. And they look at my work and they're like, what is that? Because they've learned whole different, they've got acronyms for everything now. And they're singing songs about how to solve this and solve that and so on and so forth. And I mean, like my kids are issued Chromebooks. They're, they take home Chromebooks every night. They have to make sure to charge them. They're using those in school. They use them for homework. It's quite the evolution. So I think there's a huge amount of pros if technology is used as a tool, but I think there's a huge amount of cons if we are so heavily reliant on it as being the end all. And I think that's where you get the crowd that's like super scared of AI. I think that's where that crowd comes from because they don't know any better. They assume that, okay, this thing is going to take, half the jobs in the world. And it's gonna, it's gonna take all these people out of work. And what are we going to do?
Out, Brian? You calling me out right now? Sounds like you're calling me out. Is what it sounds like.
No, but you know what I'm talking about. Though. You've got some people that are genuinely scared of AI.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I do think some of it's warranted, don't get me wrong, but as it is at this exact moment, it is a tool. It should be used as a tool for learning. It should be used as a tool to feed information into the computer and say, "Hey, how do I understand this? Help me understand this. How would I solve for this?" And learn from that. And then it's said and done at that point. You don't have to use a tool anymore because now you know how to do it for yourself. You're not just relying on it for that solution. So anyways, that's my little rant.
Jordy, since you're the closest to that generation that Brent was talking about, I'm curious to hear your opinion.
Perfect. So I've got 2 points here. I'm going to lead with the first one, which is side tension here. You know, like almost 100 years ago, actually, perfect analogy here. Have you guys seen Oppenheimer?
I have not yet, unfortunately.
I have not.
Well, you know what? It's freaking history anyway, so it's not really a spoiler for you, okay? At the beginning of that movie, the first, quarter of it, they're following, Oppenheimer around, and he starts in, Europe, right? And he's learning from, the best, doctor, scientist, physicist guy out there, right? And he's learning quantum theory. And then, he's like a top student. And they tell him, "Hey, you want to keep learning? You want to continue this, this journey you're on? You need to go learn from this guy over here in this country." So then he goes to another country and he does the same thing over. Then they tell him something else. Then he goes to another country, does the same thing over. This like 9 times, all right? And then decides that he's going to come to the United States and he's going to start theory himself. Right? And the point that I'm making here is, I mean, this man spent a good portion of his life just traveling the world, trying to learn from, the best minds in the field that he was trying to, get into. And he had to physically be there. There was no way, they didn't have the internet. There was no, hey, let me just write down, let me type, all of my scientific theory into this paper, and then I'll upload it and I'll share it with the scientific community instantaneously. No, this dude was traveling for a decade. You know what I mean? He went to school himself and then had to move all over the place, right? Whereas today, if that same breakthrough were to happen today, that change can like I said, be instantaneous. There is no click, upload, boom, now it's out there, right? And I think that's crazy. It's fascinating. It knocks, literal years off of, us as a race, getting to that next generational breakthrough, whatever that is, right? Perfect segue into my second point, which is, they're kind of like unorthodox as far as education is concerned, but I still feel, kind of meets that same, it's about learning, right? And what is education really? Anyways, my second point being, Sean, to your point, we have access to, an ever-growing repository of information. That is the look, in a really weird way, we're already kind of like cyborgs, right? Now I'm getting really way off on a tangent here, but like my phone is not ever, 10 feet away from me.
I've heard this recently. This is the second time I've heard somebody recently go on this rant that phones are the first cyborg evolution. I'm not messing with you, and it was not Jordy that did this rant. And I was like, I had the Sean reaction, then I listened to Jordy, and then I listened to the rant, and I was like, that's not the most crazy thing I've ever heard. So Jordy, give him the rant,
all right,
buddy.
spit it out.
Right? It's not that far-fetched. All I'm saying is,
hit him with it, man.
I'm never 10 feet away from my phone, right? Which means that I've got instant access to every single question that I could ever have about anything in my life, right? We've talked about AI on several different episodes, not just this one. Specifically, we've talked about AI. Where do we think that's going, right? In the next 15 years, it's theorized that we'll have, actual AGI, what is it? Artificial generative intelligence, software that can think for itself, right? And we're literally making these things to help us do things in our life, right? So it's like, I don't know, man. It's the point that I'm making is, Sean, to your point, to open this topic or question up. We have these machines, and it's like, why do we need to ask questions anymore? Because I could just type, I'm sure I've been in meetings or calls with you guys where I start to ask a question, stop and say, I'll just look it up. Why am I? I've got a computer in my pocket. Let me just, pop this question in real quick. And then we can go from there. And again, to your point, Sean, of just people underutilizing that. There's so much ignorance in the world. There's so much ignorance in the world, myself included, right? I've had my days. Just pick up the phone and
when I say that
look
it's
for
underutilized,
some stuff.
I am part of that category. That was not an elitist statement whatsoever.
I did not take it that way at all.
Hardly,
Yeah.
hardly set into that category. It's more of a self-criticism than it is a judgment.
Absolutely. Okay, and that's where I was coming from, man. We can know anything. I was watching this. My wife and I watched. This is my last bit. And I'll wrap this up. We can pass this over to Matt. But my wife and I watched this YouTube guy. His name's Chris Gazette, and it's a team of these scientists who they study space, and they take all of the things that they learn, the theory, all that stuff, and then they animate it and they talk about it. So it's all nice and digestible. And it is, it would go over a kid's head, I would assume, but it is because it's real deep stuff. But all this to say, one of his videos, he was saying the average person today knows more than an astronomer like 100 years ago. IQs are bigger or larger. They are statistically. I just looked that up. I guess statistically, there is a generational increase by about 9 points to the general IQ as we progress forward. And generation for the uninitiated is about 25 years. So just throwing that out there. Anyways, it's crazy. We've got all this information at the touch of our fingertips. And it kind of changes the game. I don't got to travel the world to learn the next big thing. You know what I mean? Nor do we have to wait years for the next breakthrough that happens in England. You know what I mean? For it to get all the way to us. And that's my spiel. That's my point. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
That was a good TED Talk, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem, man. So, this one kind of hits home for me. I've done the brick and mortar college thing, and I've done the online college thing. I honestly strongly preferred the online college thing. It worked for me way better because I could just breeze through the stuff that I knew, and I can consume. I could consume more than what my college classes were feeding me by just like trying it myself than I was just by sitting in a classroom waiting for somebody to talk to me. I can read it faster, pick up the concepts faster. So that for me that was huge, right? And that's continued to be huge for me as I've gotten certifications and this, that, and the other thing. Looking forward on this one, I very much am hopeful for AI. I have found AI to be basically the best tutor available. And it seems to be limited by how good you can tell it to be a tutor of, basically, right? If you're really good at prompting and you can tell it, convince it it's an expert in XYZ and that it knows how to find that expert, that information and be that expert and have that expertise, it's really fantastic. And I know people that are teaching themselves about TensorFlow and machine learning, and they have these master genius plans to, develop camouflage and stuff. It's wild that the stuff that they're thinking of. And they don't know about any of that. You know what they're doing? They're going to ChatGPT every single day. And, they're like, well, what if I do this? How does that work? And they're teaching themselves how to do it. And, I keep thinking about when I went to go teach myself Python, thank you, internet, way better than, picking up Python for Dummies, in my opinion, going to Code Academy or W3 or something. And, I think the next time I go to learn a language, I'm sure Python won't be my last language. ChatGPT is going to make that way easier for me. The next time I'm like, what is a class? I don't have to spend, 30 minutes reading angry comments and Stack Overflow. right? I can just go ask ChatGPT what a class is, and it'll tell me, and it won't call me stupid at the same time. So, um, that's how I feel about that. I do feel like there are some cons. Um, Information overload's a serious problem. You know, where do I go to
Mm,
like get it? How do I know what's
mhm.
good information? Well, now that I found some information, like how do I know that it's good? Well, I have to go vet it. How do I vet it? I have to go find the sources, and you end up in like this like doom loop of get a piece of information, and then you have to spend more time verifying it than receiving information. And every receive act requires three like go check acts basically, and it's for anything that's really important. It's very frustrating. um I am personally hopeful that AI will be helpful here, and I've had pretty great success so far asking, you know, ChatGPT 4 or New Bing or Copilot um, to summarize articles and, tell me about news events and stuff. And so far, I mean, like I tell it to do summary, and then I go read the article, and I go, okay, these things align close enough that I'm satisfied with it, and I'm not finding a lot of problems. Once again, I would never trust it at this point. Not like on anything that really matters. Everything that really matters requires manual verification still, but it cuts down some of the like simple stuff. And that's my feelings on that.
I'd agree as well with the verification. I think it's good to have, with technology in general, a healthy bit of skepticism on the
Mhm.
information that you're reading. If it's like you said, if it's something important, you should probably go check it. But that's been the process for forever, right? So
Yeah,
that, and I think
yeah.
that goes back to something that Brent was talking about, which is like, you kind of you need to think for yourself when you're receiving these things. Don't just assume,
Mhm.
actually vet, because
Very much. Yeah.
it does kill innovation, but it also, in the sense that like innovativeness of you from yourself, but also making sure that there's due diligence.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really critical part of it, right? I mean, realistically, this just helps with some of that front end. You still have the back end checking, but now you can, you know, the best way to think about it is that, if I'm reading articles on Reddit, all right, I can go to the news article, and it's 500 words, and I should probably just read them, but I'm not gonna, because I don't have time for that. So instead, I go to the comments. I try to hit the top few comments, right? And
Hmm.
that's good, I guess. But you can get a gist of an article, but ChatGPT can do better than the comments, and it's faster than reading the article. So it gets you
It
like,
aggregates information in a much more
yeah,
digestible fashion, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And then there's the obvious. You can turn around and then, well, tell me about this. Contextual fact that's immediately related to it, right? And this
Hmm.
helps with the information overload. It helps with the education. Once again, it's a lying sack of crap sometimes. So, con with all of that above. All right, there we go.
Okay, so we're getting long on the episode, so I'm gonna combine the last two, but it's basically somewhat similar, or it falls under the category. So it's cultural and societal changes, but I'm lumping in entertainment and leisure inside of it. And I think the reason why these two kind of go hand in hand is that when you look at specifically where we're at, United States, there is this. I'm going to use a big word here, but I can't think of another one. I'm not trying to be fancy, but there's a juxtaposition with, this entertainment versus being productive. And that's a big struggle for me personally, is the I have an infinite amount of entertainment in front of me, specifically video games, but other things as well. Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, sports, everything. I mean, anything you can really think of that you want to dive into, you can be entertained by it if you really want to be. And so it's hard for me because while some of that entertainment is tied into psychology, philosophy, you know, education, and trying to better myself, some of that is obfuscated by the amount of, for lack of a better term, leisure that I consume. And there's always this, and this could be uh, my own brain being too harsh, but it's definitely impacted me because I feel like I lean more on the entertainment side. But if you take a 30,000 foot view of society as a whole, it's really wild to see the amount of interaction that different ideologies can have now. It's almost in line with what Matt said about the information overload. There's so many different political, religious, everything. And I'm not leaning for or against, I'm just making a general statement here. Like the amount of those things that occur and how quickly that those exchanges happen, again, to me, it's just crazy how much almost every society in the world is tied to technology now. It's like the equivalent of the steam engine, right? Or the Industrial Revolution. I mean, it functionally changed how society as a whole worked. And so, what I'm curious about is we're in a current iteration with the way things are moving, with how fast those iterations come. What does 10, 15, 20 years look like with
LOL.
technology?
God,
Like,
man.
I mean, I can't even fathom it. So you look at sci-fi, you look at the old Shatner, Star Trek, and you go, those little handhelds. Well, we got that better. They couldn't even fathom what we have now. They couldn't think forward far enough. And so when you look retroactively back, you go, my God, they had no idea. What are the next generations going to do? It's absolutely wild to me. And yet, what's so funny is that it's still primarily, I don't say primarily, there's a large portion that's malicious. And it kind of bums me out because, not kind of, it really bums me out because it's so friggin' cool. Like, if you think about the age of technology, which is what we're in, like a true definition, age of technology, it's insanity that we still have some of the problems that we have. And I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail, but it's crazy how you have infinite amount of entertainment, you have infinite amount of communication. So I'm really curious to see if these problems exacerbate themselves as things go forward, because it's solved a lot of problems, but it's created new problems. And so how do you deal with those? And that's probably a never ending cycle, right? So maybe I'm just being overly pessimistic for no reason, but I think it's really, really cool. I'm interested to see where things go as a whole with technology and how it changes humanity, because me personally, I'm looking for the colonizing the stars portion. You know what I mean? That's where I'm headed. So, all right, I'm gonna shut up, Brent.
Yeah, I think I honestly felt like by this point in time, with all the progress we made halfway through the last century on space exploration and getting to the moon, all that, the effort spent involved in that, and then we just kind of stopped, I feel like. And so I'm with you on that. The whole going back to the stars, being able to survive that, be able to excel while in the stars. Like, I understand we got folks on the International Space Station and stuff like that, but it's like, okay, we did that. What is next? And I know money's a concern, and there's the whole, like you were talking about before, the political part of it, and that's a multi-country, worldwide effort if we want to do it right. That's not just the United States pulling that off. That is everybody working together. Yep. And so we have to get our own crap straight first in order to kind of make that happen. If the house isn't in order, nothing else is going to be in order, right? So, but I'm all about that. I would love to see more space anything. I feel like we are way behind on that just as a human race. I feel like we should have been just further along. And I think probably, to that same extent, but going down, there's depths of the ocean. We have no clue what's down there. Rest in peace, the folks that were on that. I can't even think of it now, but the little sub that went down, we have, very specialized equipment that goes down there and is able to see to a certain extent, but there's parts of the ocean that light can't even penetrate. We can't get to it because it's it's so pressurized, and it's very similar to space and the technological advancements that we need to make it possible to one, be able to survive down there without imploding. Same with going up into space. It's kind of the same premise, being able to survive while out there, but also just be able to, like, once we get out there, okay, now how do we collect information and process that information that we can use to advance society, to advance technology further? We won't go down that rabbit hole, but I do believe, I will say, I find it hard to believe that we are the only folks out there, the only intellectual beings out there.
Just say it, bro. Why you dancing on it? Yeah, come on, bro.
Why have I danced?
You got 3 believers right here.
Yeah, just go ahead and say believe.
Yeah, believe. I'm not saying aliens in like the traditional stereotypical thing, but I really do find it hard to believe that with all the knowledge we have to this point, and we know there's other planets, I find it hard to believe that there's not other organisms to some extent out there, but also organisms that have intellect, that have advanced either to our point or much further than us, and we don't have the capability to see that, to communicate with those organisms, or those beings, however we want to phrase that. So I'm right there with you on that. I think immediately we're going to see, back down to earth. Let's shrink the time frame a little bit. We've been hung up on the whole AI discussion quite a bit. I definitely see AI being the focal point. I forgot where, I don't know if we talked about it or if I read about it, where they said that AI is like the next industrial revolution. It's the next phase of that.
No.
Or it's like similar to that. It's where we're at right now. It's like a technological revolution. I think we're going to see AI baked into everything. It's going to change.
Yeah.
Oh, you see it already.
Yeah. But I think we're going to see it. It's going to be just a core thing. We're going to be so used to something responding back with some level of understanding, some level of being able to associate millions of sets of data points together in a split second and come back to us with an answer, and it be responsive, it be conversational. We're going to see a lot more of that, I think, in every little thing that we touch day to day. And then past that, I do think that, talking of like having a cell phone in our hand, for me, I think the next evolution of that, the next iteration of that, once we stop holding a device, I think we're going to have whatever an implant would look like, whatever that turns out to be. I think we are going to have something that is attached to our body in some shape or form. And we're going to be connected like we've never seen before. We won't even hear a notification. Our brain's going to interpret an electrical impulse that is a notification. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to have that sort of thing. We're going to finally figure out the human brain. I think AI is going to help drive us forward on that.
Of that, though,
it's wild. I know, but you've got people pushing for it. I just read an article the other day where they said they have, they were able to grow portions of brain cells and hook that up to AI. And the AI is to the point now, they've got it to where it can interpret the electrical impulses from those brain cells and kind of like very basic, like yes or no, like zeros and one responses to certain stimuli. and the AI is able to like pick up on that pattern and be able to essentially act as like a translation layer of saying yes or no from those electrical impulses. So if we're able to further, decode that age old cipher of the brain, the human brain, I feel like that's the one of the few pieces of the human body that we've yet to like really figure out. I mean, we'd be to the point where we could cure dementia, Parkinson's, those sorts of, just those neurological, heavy brain focused diseases. We'd be able to get around all that stuff. The AI would be like,
I
go
think
sever
you would
this.
really enjoy the Mechanicus from Warhammer 40K. You're talking like a true zealot. My man. Yeah.
He sell it.
I know enough about him to agree with that. Yep.
Brent's looking for the Omnisire right now. He's just all about it. He knows.
Heard that.
No. But
Sorry.
that's my rant. Jordan, go ahead.
It's funny. You dropped it a couple times, Brent, and Sean, you may have said something about it, but I've been constantly thinking of like what's the next big thing, and I feel like that's probably been one of the reasons I've been so excited about AI is like that is the next big thing, right? And I think the last thing for us was probably technology-wise, like the iPhone, at a very general level, like changed the way that we all interact with phones. Totally up for debate, but just at a consumer level, right? And it is strange. Like I'm trying to remember back then where it was like, oh man, that's such a cool, I was really young anyways, but oh, that's so cool. Especially, thinking of what, I grew up phones and my mom finally did get like a cell phone. Oh, that shit was whack, man. Like, they were terrible. So to see the iPhone is like a cool, and I'm not trying to get stuck on this stupid phone, but like that's how I feel right now. Like really giddy about new technology that seems to just not be a new fad. It's crazy how much this has been integrated into everything already. Even like a Google search is not just a Google search anymore. Now they've got, their generative AI is now summarizing, the answers and all of these different articles, which just gets us the information super quick. And now I can spend my time doing other things. And really, we're talking about like milliseconds to seconds, back on, for an ROI, if you will, right? But it's the same thing. 30, 40 years ago, we had to send letters to people. I'm waiting days. I'm waiting weeks for a response. You know what I mean? I guess that wasn't the main way of communication, but you get what I'm saying, right? You go back far enough, and you had
the telegraph.
It wasn't just
and
a couple
some other
seconds
stuff,
that
so,
you're.
I mean, there's ways,
right? Up until cell phones, or not cell phones, but just regular telephone communication in general, was a thing. You're taking a long way around. You know what I mean? And so when you look at that, sometimes I kind of laugh at like, man, it's crazy how annoyed that we'll get if like a web page takes like half a second to load longer than it normally would. And it's like, man, I'm ready to blow a gasket and throw my keyboard out the window because something's not working right here. But a couple generations ago, that's all they did was wait. And they didn't have the internet or video games to fill the time, right? So, I think on the opposite end of that token, that like how quick we can have all these things at our fingertips, it's kind of soiled us a little bit, right? I feel like millennials are probably the last. We were a generation born at the end of the old ways and right into the new. Right. And so, we had VHSs and VCRs in my house. And I talked to my cousin about what those things are, and he looks at me like I'm stupid. You know what I mean? And there's a 12-year gap between us. So it doesn't feel that long. And like you blink your eyes and it's like, holy crap, we're already another generation ahead. And there's an entire generation of technology that at one point in the last 30 years was state of the art. And now nobody's got them. You know what I mean? So, I guess what I'm really trying to make as a final point is, you know, the quicker we can these things, and we know already there is an impact on, you know, we don't know the true extent of the impact, but there is an impact. And I guess I just want to use one, aspect of this, which I guess would be like an attention span, right? There are reasons why TikTok is king of social media right now, and it's that short form content. And it's like, as time goes on, because we can have all of these things at our fingertips, it's like, hey, a couple seconds of my time to really hook me into whatever you got, and then I'm out of here, right? Whether that's a web page, let Google take too long to answer a question. Fine, I don't want the answer anymore. Something else. I've lost interest. Netflix ain't gonna load, you know, my Kevin Hart movie. Fine, I didn't want to watch Netflix anyway. Let me go try something else. You know what I mean? Oh, can't get loaded into a video game? Guess I'm not playing video games today. Whatever. And it's just, we just constantly move on to the next. So as excited as I am to like be on this journey and figure out, you know, what AI looks like in 15 years, it's crazy the jump that we've had in 15 years of smartphones, right? The first iPhone came out in 2007, right? So we're right there. We're just at that 15-year mark. It's insane. Phone has more hardware in it than Chromebooks did 5 years ago, arguably even today, right? So I'm really excited about getting to see where we're going to be in 15 years, tech-wise, AI specifically. But I'm also really, I'm going to say scared, I guess, for us as like how. What do you? I don't know, man. I'm just the implications on, you know, us as a people. Social implications. The last 20 years, it feels like there's been a decline in common sense and a lot of other things. You know, it's like I feel like we're hustling backwards when we should be moving. So will we all kind of get on the same page and move forward together? Or are we going to continue this distancing where the older generations, you know, stay senile and angry because we had to teach ourselves everything, and the newer generations, you know, do whatever they do. You know, I hope what I'm saying makes sense. I feel like I'm rambling now, so I'm going to stop. But that's my spiel there. I'm excited and cautiously optimistic at the same time.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll just go ahead and hop in. Where will we be in 5 or 10 years? It's so hard to say. The changes they're just coming so fast, and it feels impossible. You know, let's say Elon Musk actually gets the Neuralink stuff to stop frying people and chimpanzee brains, and it actually starts working, right? I mean, that would be nuts. You excuse me, you install wires in your head, and then what? Now you can control your computer and your smartphone. Do you need a keyboard anymore eventually? Right? Can we imagine if computers no longer needed keyboards? Like
Instantaneous, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, and then it's like, well, where's the bottleneck at that point? And like, what buffers where, and how does it work? And I mean, like, what happens if that happens in the next 5 years? Does that mean 5 years later that it becomes consumer grade affordable? Right? And you start seeing regular people get these implants, or even better, something that you like put on and take off your head. I remember a TED Talk I saw probably 10 years ago. And the people were able to put on this little helmet looking thing. And with that helmet looking thing, they could interact with a box on a screen. And they couldn't do much, but they could basically push the box, and they could pull the box. And they did it with training. So I mean, it would never work on the consumer market. They had to sit there and think about pushing the box, and then, okay, training's over, and now training start, think about pushing the box. All right. And then after a while, the thing, I guess your brain just looks different when it's thinking about pushing a box versus pulling a box, because the computer could interpret these things. And I think that was like maybe it's close to 7 years ago. No, it's gotta be 10. And so, now we're getting to like 10 years from now, we're talking about Neuralink, and, that's supposed to be really advanced stuff. And it just, I personally perceive the next big move is some sort of implant. I don't know if it's 5 or 10 years away, but, the cell phone has a lifespan associated with it for sure as a technology. I don't know if it's 10 years, but I don't know. It's probably not 50. And gosh, who knows what'll be then. I wouldn't even like venture to guess what 50 years looks like. So I guess at the end of it, the answer is I don't know. Everything moves so fast. I don't think that I could have predicted the power of compute today, 10 years ago successfully. And I certainly can't predict what we're going to look like after introducing, generative AI to the mix. I mean, did you guys see those articles about, it found like X hundred theoretical different like materials that could possibly be used for as metals or something? I'm sorry, I don't remember the details. I'm sure I got a bunch of it wrong there, but it's something that it would have taken, humans years to do. And it was like, 3 months later, here's a bunch of new information for you to try.
Yeah.
Right. And, I don't know. It's hard to predict. That's all I'm saying. I guess that's my TED talk.
No, I
I'm
think
glad to be here, Matt. Thanks.
yeah, it was
Thank
It was a good one. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone actually. I figured that there would be some general consensus, but it's something to think about. And the reason I wanted to discuss it is because we're in unprecedented times. And I'm sure every generation could probably say that, but the amount of change to humanity feels way more than prior, at least from my perspective. So I wanted to get everybody's thoughts on it. But this was great. I mean, that's really all I had.
Yeah, it was a good topic, Sean.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
topics.
nice to take. It's nice to take a 30,000 foot view and go, all right, we talk about the nitty gritty stuff a lot, but what about the world? Because if you think about it, if you could unify the entirety of the world together to better the human race and come together collectively to conquer our world and then outward, we would be unstoppable. It feels like. So it's interesting that over the length of our existence, we haven't come to that yet. And even with the tools to do that and break divides and all these things, it still hasn't happened. It's just crazy to me. But I think all of it is a double-edged sword. And if there's not enough caution with some of these things, and because we haven't overcome those obstacles as a race yet, that there's some hesitancy there because we haven't quite gotten through those problems. So it feels like we're stumbling and running when we should be crawling and really thinking through implications. But anyway, I'm going to start rambling again. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end the episode because I could talk about this for the entirety of the night.
Man,
So
we'd go on forever.
yes, we
yeah,
would.
definitely.
Yeah, but thank you for joining us. Sincerely, it's always awesome and happy to be back. I know I've been missing for a couple of these, but had some life stuff going on. So
Sean, you suck.
I know. Look,
Oh,
whoa. Okay, hold on. Why are you yelling at me? Number one.
I'm just kidding,
Number two.
Jordy out here sniping you too.
Yeah, you see if you can make it to the next podcast. Let's just see.
Hey!
I'm about to cut you out on the editing. Yeah, just gone. Thanks.
Oh.
No, I'm joking. But thank you all for coming and supporting us. And please, I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts in the Discord. Come talk to us. We love having these conversations. This stuff happens when we play games or what have you. So we're always down to talk about that stuff. And we'll see you in the next episode. And y'all take it easy.
Bye.
bye guys.
Bye.